Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Preamble. We had already covered that the claim would comprise of three parts: the preamble, the transition, and the body. The preamble usually covers the field of the invention because it's what introduces the claim. That's the first part of the claim that you get to read. So it should ideally define the field of the invention. It could also get into the statutory class of the claim. See what we had already seen in the IPC code. The IPC code can determine the class. So it could also, if the preamble has to give in more details about the invention, it could also cover a particular class or a subclass. Usually, what is stated in the preamble is not treated as a claim limitation. By that, we mean it does not restrict the scope of the claim. Whatever you find in the preamble usually is not used to restrict the scope. But there are some cases where words used in the preamble could be used for restricting the scope of the claim. We had already mentioned that what is covered in the body part is what is being claimed. The preamble only gives an introduction to the field or to the field of the invention. So, any limitation in the preamble will not be treated as a claim limitation. But an element in the body can derive antecedent basis, a concept which we'll be explaining soon, from the preamble. May be an essential component of the claim. It is advisable not to rely on the preamble for antecedent basis. Now you may recite a element in the body and choose to mention it in the preamble. Now that can have certain consequences. But if you don't want something to be a claim limitation, you will ideally not mention it in the preamble. A shorter preamble, for that reason, is preferred. The preamble could also be related to the title in some way. A preamble and the body should be consistent with each other together to form the whole claim. The body should be a continuation of what comes after the preamble. The title can be modified to create a preamble. If you see the title, it's normally less than 15 words. So the title could form, in some cases, the starting point for creating a preamble. Too broad a preamble may not be advisable. For instance, a pen comprising will be too broad a preamble because pens have been in use and have been patented for quite some time. So it may be a ballpoint pen or a fountain pen. It could be more specific. The breadth of the preamble can also cover a larger group of inventions. If you see, if a pen includes a cap to cover a writing tip, or if it's a pencil which includes a cap to cover the writing tip, instead of using a pen or a pencil, you could cover a writing device. So a writing device comprising a cap to cover the writing tip would be much broader than a pen comprising a writing tip or a pencil comprising a cap to cover the writing tip. So in a sense, when you use the word a writing device in the preamble instead of the word pen or pencil, you expand the breadth of the preamble. Limitations in the preamble. It is advisable to avoid limitations in the preamble. The limitations should come, if at all, in the body. There is no need to include the object of the invention in the preamble, though in some cases you will find examples of including the object of the invention. The reason for that is that the invention may have multiple objects. It may solve many problems, and the object of the invention it would not be possible to mention all the objects in the preamble. We just mentioned that you could use the title as the starting point of the preamble, but title serves a distinct purpose. The title shall disclose the specific features of the invention. That's a requirement under the Act, whereas the preamble has to define the field of invention. So in cases where the disclosing the specific features and defining the field of the invention don't match, title may not be the right place to start as a draft for a preamble. Claim limitation. A claim limitation may appear in the preamble. Now, for instance, in this case, Caston Manufacturing Corporation versus Cleveland Golf, the word correlated set appeared in the preamble. Now, because it appeared in the preamble, it was treated as a claim limitation. Now, all the claims in this case began with the words an improved correlated set of iron type golf clubs. So, the word correlated set, because it came within the preamble, it was used for limiting the claim. The claims were read narrowly. Now, there are two rules. When it comes to preamble, there are two rules on limitation that you need to bear in mind. One, if a limitation in the preamble is for limiting the scope of the claim, it should be repeated in the body. So what you mention in the preamble to limit the scope of this claim, it has to be reiterated or repeated in the body as well, so that it is very clear that the limitation that you have incorporated is not something which you mentioned inadvertently in the preamble. It has to come in the body. So what you say in the preamble should be repeated in the body. Rule number 2. If a limitation in the preamble is not for limiting the scope of the claim, now you don't want to limit the scope of the claim by mentioning something in the preamble, then that limitation should be omitted from the preamble. You should not mention anything, like in the earlier example, a correlated set. You should not be mentioning it if you don't want that to limit the scope of the claim. Rather, it is safer to mention correlated set in the body part of the claim. Types of preamble. As we said, preamble is nothing but an introductory statement which introduces the invention. Now, it could be as simple as a process, explaining the process, an apparatus, detailing the apparatus, a process for purifying honey, which is a process with a function, the process accompanied by the function of what the process is for, a device for cutting paper, again a device with an accompanying function, a biodegradable pesticide delivery system, again it is something which tells you more about what the pesticide delivery system is about. It's a pesticide delivery system which is also biodegradable. Or it could be something like a composition for detection of a specific chemical substance in a testing fluid. Now, this tells us it's a composition, but it also tells what the composition is for. It is for detection of a specific chemical substance in a different environment, which is a testing fluid. So this is a much more detailed preamble. It could have been perfectly fine if the applicant had mentioned it as composition, but we will understand that as there are more patterns in a particular field, the need for a more detailed preamble would arise. A preamble with a function. Now, in such cases where the preamble also describes a function, it describes the context of the invention. The context can be indicated in the preamble. For instance, an apparatus for, mention the purpose for which it is used, for farming, for cutting, the apparatus comprising. So you say it in the preamble and you also say it, you repeat that it is the apparatus so that it is not mistaken for the purpose. So an apparatus for farming, the apparatus comprising, and it proceeds. So it describes the function, but when you describe the function, it is better to repeat the class of the claim. In this case, it's an apparatus again. Dependent claims should have the same preamble as their parent. If there are a series or one dependent or a series or a group of dependent claims which take its origin from a particular parent, an independent claim, then the preamble has to be the same. You cannot have a dependent claim which has a preamble which is different from its parent. That could lead to ambiguity. Now let's look at an example of a long preamble. A dispensing top for passing only several kernels of a popped popcorn at a time from an open-ended container filled with popped popcorn. Then the thing proceeds. What is highlighted in red is the preamble. So you will understand that the preamble gets longer if it describes the function and it also sets the field of its operation.